everyone, Melissa here with the Sunshine Planner, and today I am back with another video. We are going to be doing a charcuterie board today. I am here with my beauty, my lovely daughter, who I'm visiting in Spokane, Washington. This is where she lives, and it's an honor for me to be able to be in the kitchen with her. I think we have some similarities of having a love for cooking and a love for doing things in the kitchen, and so that's what we're going to be doing today. I will kind of be the bystander a little bit. This is her area of expertise. She has a love for charcuterie boards, so she just has a lot of fun with them, and I'm just going to kind of stand back and maybe ask her some questions and watch her do her things. So let's go ahead and get started. Cheers, sis.
Cheers.
So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the items that we selected that we together went around and selected for the charcuterie board. And some of them are just simple. We just made the decision, like our fruits. We chose to go with blackberries and grapes and a green apple. The other thing, and then also let's not forget, we brought back from our trip in Walla Walla this last weekend, we brought back some plums from a plum tree from the owner of the Airbnb that we stayed at. So we're gonna put some of those on here.
So we have a bunch of cheeses for this one, and I like to stock up on more cheeses and not necessarily utilize them all. It just depends. So we grabbed a bunch throughout the week this week for the board. A lot of the ones that I get are from Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's has a really good cheese section. And the employees there know a lot about the cheeses, so if you do want to try some new stuff, you can ask them. One of my friend's favorite is a Syrah Toscano. It's creamy, it's really good. And then of course we have a sharp cheddar, like I had mentioned, it goes really good with the apples.
That's one of my favorites.
A new one we tried that we're adding is a champagne cheddar. We got this one from a store here called My Fresh Basket, but it was really good and smooth and sweet. That one was good with grapes. Is that what we kind of did it with? The apples, the grapes?
I think we paired it with everything on the board, and it was really good with everything on the board. So
that's the fun thing about the charcuterie board, is that you can mix and match for a lot of different flavors, and a meat might change a cheese completely. Same thing with the jams and the crackers. So it's kind of just about playing with it. A staple on my boards is always brie. It's one of my favorites. Sometimes I will drizzle honey on the brie. Sometimes I'll put rosemary on it. I don't always bake it. You can bake it and also add it to your board. But it's really, really good. And then we grabbed a couple goat cheeses. I've tried one similar to this, but we grabbed a cranberry cinnamon goat cheese and then a tomato basil goat cheese. And then
it's called cheddar blue cheese, and I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people, I'm not a fan of blue cheese cheese in general. Overall, just eat it fresh or whatever. But however, we stopped at this place called Wanderlust Delicato here in Spokane downtown, and it's a really unique little like cafe type thing. It's kind of old world. It's got an old world feeling when you walk in. The owner has tables decorated with maps on top of all over the world. It was just so cute, wasn't it? They have little things that you can buy, little gifty type things you can buy, but they have a wine selection that I thought was pretty good.
It was pretty expensive.
And then you can either order to go charcuterie boards, but they have a lot of very unique cheeses there. And we got two. One we're not putting on the board. We're actually going to use it in a recipe. But this one happens to be a cheddar blue cheese. They have a chef there. They have cooking classes. I just wanted to shout out to them because it's a really unique place. Wanderlust Delicato is the name of it. And you can do, like I said, cooking classes there. They have a chef that has fantastic, he gave us a recipe that we're going to be using for supper one night. But anyway, so yeah, and then the last one is
a smoked cheddar. I thought it was going to be a Gouda, but it is actually a smoked English cheddar. And then we have the mozzarella sticks that we'll be wrapping.
I think we used the smoked Gouda in the other one the other day.
It was a bourbon Gouda.
Oh, a bourbon Gouda.
It was really good.
It was really good. Bourbon Gouda. We used that one in the other charcuterie board the other day. If you ever get a chance to buy a bourbon Gouda. It was fantastic.
It was really, really
so.
good.
Those were the two that were the most popular. Was the bourbon Gouda and the champagne one from my. Did we get them both from the same place too?
Yep, we got them both from My Fresh Basket.
Yeah.
They had a really good cheese selection as well, like Trader Joe's did.
Yeah. So we also have honey. I think you're gonna sprinkle that over the brie this time.
Yep, that's from a local. I got it at the farmers market last week. Wednesdays, Kendall Yards has a farmers market. And
So Highland Honey Farm is local, and this is 100% raw honey. So, and then the two jams that we selected were, of course, fig butter today. We've done pepper jelly. The other day we did some pepper jelly. And then we're trying a new one today, blueberry pomegranate. Brittany, I'm gonna let you go ahead and talk about these two meats.
We got them in Walla Walla at a tasting room I'm actually a membership at. It's Guard Vintners in Walla Walla, Washington. They also have a place in Woodinville, Washington. But essentially, both of them are infused with their red blend. It's called the Dawn. So they made a pepperoni and a salami out of those. So we chose that because we were there.
Yes, we were in Walla Walla, had a great time there, and thought that was a great idea. So we went ahead and selected those. The other ones are traditional ones. Wouldn't you say, Brittany, that you kind of put on a charcuterie board?
Yeah, so these ones are going to be more ones that you can find at any grocery store. So they're going to be just in the deli aisle because they're fresher meats. They're not really the ones that are dried out and packaged. I like getting the fresher ones just because they have better taste, go with the cheese better. But you can usually find them at any grocery store in the deli area.
One thing that you do always put on your board, Brittany, don't you, is prosciutto?
I do. The store was actually out, and it's been a pretty common thing. In the summer, you'll find struggles with getting some of those items just because charcuterie boards are more of a summer type snack and appetizer for parties. So a lot of times prosciutto will run out compared to some of the other meats.
And we did do a charcuterie board earlier in the week for her friend's birthday, and we actually took the last of it, didn't we?
Yeah, we used it all up.
And
Sorry
when we
about
went
that.
to go back and get more, they had not restocked it. So, so those are the meats. And then one of these, I think it's this one right here, we're actually going to take and wrap around a couple of mozzarella sticks. This is just, it isn't about what kind of meat, it's the size of the salami that we're using that can wrap around the stick.
So the first thing that I always do is I choose my charcuterie board size. There's a bunch of different sizes that you can go buy. I have a few. Sometimes just me and my best friend will do a little board for a girls' night. Sometimes I host a lot of people, so I'll do a larger board. And sometimes it takes two boards because just depending on the amount of people. But I have a couple different ones, different shapes and sizes, and it kind of helps with how I organize everything. Today's board that I'm doing is going to be a rather large one. It's about 30 inches long. It's this big. So it can actually fit quite a bit. I usually do about 5 to 6 cheeses for this size. Probably would feed 6 to 8 people, give or take. I have a smaller board as well. This one is about a 12 by 12, and it's more like a 2-person, just small little dips and such like that. Maybe a 2 to 3 cheese max type of board because you don't want it to be overcrowded. The one I used the other day for my friends, which there was about 5 or 6 of us, is this one. It was actually the girl's birthday who got this for me originally because she knows I love charcuterie boards. The nice thing about this one is it is actually a Lazy Susan, so you can spin it. If you're ever looking to start with getting charcuterie boards, TJ Maxx has a really great selection. And then I also got another larger one that's somewhere else. That one's more of like a 24-inch one, and that was only $15. So if you're just getting started, then I would recommend going there. They have really cool designs and so on.
Do you ever do boards with like chunk cheese, or do you just like to do them in pie shape, full pieces?
Typically it just depends on the type of cheese. If it's something more of like a block cheese like this, I might thinly slice it and do it in a fan look.
Okay.
If it comes already in a triangle, you can either lay it upright like this. Brie preferably is like that because you keep the skin on. Champagne cheddar, you're going to actually take the skin off. So it's a little easier if you do it different ways. And sometimes what I do is, I don't like them all facing the same direction all the time, so I might switch it up, but I like to give my cheeses dimension. And so sometimes I'll turn them on the side like this so you can still see the color instead of just upright. Plus it kind of helps easier cutting wise. So one thing I would like to mention when you're prepping your cheeses is cheese is actually meant to be served warm, but it's better if you're prepping it cold. That way it cuts better. This is what's called a cheese slicer. My mom actually got this for me from an antique store. I will say I bought brand new cheese slicers and they have not worked half as well as the ones that my mom got me from antique stores. I have a couple that she's found me. But the ones in stores, they are nicer. But if you find the thinner wire ones, that's actually what cuts easier than the thicker wire ones. I've just noticed that these older ones are actually way better than the store ones, and they're way cheaper if you find them at an antique store. I kind of just like to play with how my cheese looks. I always start with my cheese as my basis and then kind of go from there as far as filling everything else, because it's easier to fill with the fruits and the meats than it is the cheese. So I'll probably have one more cheese right here, and that'll be enough for this board because everything else will be filled.
So you always start with your cheeses?
It's just my style. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just kind of how I like to separate it and then decide where I want to put the extra things, because really your cheese is the basis of a charcuterie board, where you'd add fruit near the ones that match well. Even that being said though, I mix and match all the fruit and the meats that I use, so it doesn't really have a rhyme or reason to it to me. Someone who's a lot more experienced would actually put things next to each other that go well with each other, but essentially people will just try things, different mixtures, which is the fun part of it in my opinion. After we have all of our cheeses on our board and how you like them, then that's kind of when I start with the meat. I will say I skip back and forth in between my meat and my fruit, just because I move things around a lot and I like to fill it and kind of match things how I want them to. So I don't have like a extreme strategy, but right after the cheese is kind of when I get my meats together and play with it from there. One of the big goals that I have when I make my charcuterie boards is I don't like to actually see a lot of the board, although they're very pretty. The goal is to kind of fill it with as much fun stuff as possible. So I kind of just really stack it on there when it comes to meats and surround like the cheeses with the meats, the fruits as well. Everything's kind of usually touching and integrated. The only time I wouldn't do that is if someone had an allergy or was a preference about things not touching. I know people can be odd about that, but typically I do like to fill it all the way around. That way it is as full as possible.
It's an art, isn't it, Brittany?
Yeah, and honestly, it's a lot of trial and error. I'm learning, I'm still learning quite a bit about charcuterie boards, but a lot of it's just seeing which meats will do what, making them look pretty.
So Brittany, why do you have this smaller board over here?
I have the smaller one that I'm making right now because I surprised you with a mother-daughter photo shoot tonight where we're doing a lifestyle photo shoot, a picnic with wine and a charcuterie board looking style. So it'll be more real life looking versus your standard pictures. So we're gonna go up to Green Bluff, which is kind of like a fall harvesty farm area. and take some photos and pretend like we're doing a picnic, even though, I mean, we will eat, but, but it'll be a little staged, but it'll look cute when all said and done. I will say one of the biggest tips that I do have when you're doing your meats though is get extra. Meat is usually one of the first things that I run out with on my board, so if you ever want to like refill it or touch areas up, I would get extra meats because there's always a lot of cheese but never enough meats or crackers. Sometimes crackers are refillable as well.
Brittany and I came across a charcuterie board. I don't know what the title was. A title charcuterie board.
It's called On Boards, and it's kind of nice because it doesn't just do meats and cheeses. It actually does a lot of different ones in there, but it gives you instructions on how to cut different cheeses, how to lay out the boards, some different mixing and matching. There's a couple cool like big pictures in there so you can get ideas on how to lay things out if you've never done them before. But yeah, it just looked really cool. So we both actually ended up buying it since we both like making these so much.
So I will put a link of the store that I got it from, that we got it from. Mm-hmm. It's 365 Butter is what it's called, the store, because you can order online.
Yep. And they're a local there. It's not like so if you're looking to shop local and support small businesses, you can order from them because they will ship for you. Okay. So let's get started on the fruit. Today we have the blackberries, green apple, and then I also have green grapes and plums. The plums I won't do any cutting. They're more for decorative purposes in this type of board, just because we do want fillers. If someone were to want one, it would go well with all of these cheeses and meats, but they're not typically something I put on here, but it's nice to have a variation of color as well, so it worked out well that we had these. There's a couple different things that you can do as far as doing your jams. Sometimes I just put it directly on the board depending how thick the type of jam is. My mom makes a really good hot pepper jelly that I will put on there, and that is very, very thick. So it just kind of depends on what you're working with. These ones, we purchased these little buckets, which are just kind of fun. It gives your board a little bit of color and a little bit more creativity than just putting it on there. You can get these at the dollar store. We found yesterday that they kind of overflow really easily. But they're still kind of nice to have in case you don't want the juices sipping anywhere or anything like that. But we're going to put them in these today. And then as I mentioned, today I'm deciding to put honey on our brie. So I'm just gonna dip the spoon in and grab some like this and just kind of lightly drizzle it over. Make it a little sweeter, not too much. I have seen it where this is sometimes put in a little bowl next to it with like, they have like the little wands that you can drizzle that all in there. Okay, so we're starting to near the end of our board. At this point, it's kind of up to you if you prefer to add more meat or if you just want to lay the crackers on. If I'm really like this larger board, I probably would have filled it with more cheese and meat just because I was most likely serving a lot of people. And so sometimes I will do the crackers and such on sides. Like our smaller board over here, we don't really have a lot of room for crackers on there just because it is for 2 people. Your larger ones you might. So I'm gonna add a couple things in here just to give it a little bit of depth. But typically I don't like to put a ton of crackers in there because I'd rather have the good stuff as well. The big thing about the crackers too that we forgot to mention earlier is I like to get different shapes. I don't like them all to be just circles or squares. I like to add that little piece in there too, so it does give it that depth I was talking about. But we did a couple rectangles, then we had the Parmesan crisp and the sticks. So those.